The dress didn't fit right. Elira knew this before she even reached the bottom of the stairs, because her sister Camille had picked it out, and Camille never picked anything that actually fit. She picked things that almost fit. That was the whole trick of it. The Vance house had 3 daughters once. Now it had 2 who mattered, and 1 who was allowed to stand near the good china as long as she didn't touch it. Elira was the one near the china. She was 22 years old, the middle daughter, the one nobody wrote songs about. Her older sister Camille was the beauty everyone talked about at market, the one who could walk into a room and make 3 young alphas forget what they were saying mid-sentence. Her younger sister, little Wren, was still a child, still soft, still too young to understand what tonight actually was. Tonight was a hunting ground. Everyone just called it a ball. Every unmated Omega from the northern packs had been dressed up and sent downstairs like prize cattle at a fair. Fathers stood near the walls totaling up dowries in their heads. Mothers whispered behind fans about whose daughter had come along nicely this year. And somewhere above all of it, on a raised platform draped in dark green cloth, sat the reason everyone had bothered to show up at all. King Roderick Blackthorn, alpha of the Blackthorn pack, a man 3 kingdoms used to make their children behave. Elira had never seen him in person. Nobody her age had, not really. He didn't attend balls, he didn't attend anything. Rumor said he hadn't smiled since his mother died, hadn't taken a mate because he didn't believe in the idea, hadn't spoken more than 10 words to anyone outside his own council in over a year. So when the announcement came 2 weeks ago that he would be attending the Vance ball personally, the whole house had gone into a kind of controlled panic that lasted 14 days straight. Elira had spent those 14 days mostly in the kitchen, mostly ignored, which was fine by her. Being ignored was safe. Being noticed in this family usually meant something was about to go wrong. She reached the bottom step. The dress pulled tight across her ribs. She breathed in small, careful sips, the way you learn to breathe when a garment isn't yours to complain about. Her mother hadn't come down yet. Her father was already 3 drinks past careful. And Camille found her in under 4 minutes. She always did. It was practically a talent. "You came," Camille said, drifting close with 2 flutes of champagne, neither one meant for Elira. "I told Mother you'd chicken out and hide in the kitchen again." "I don't hide." "No." Camille looked her over slowly, the way you'd check a horse's teeth before deciding not to buy it. "You just fail quietly instead. It's tidier that way, I suppose." A server passed. Camille didn't offer her a glass. "Do you know why I picked that dress for you?" Elira didn't answer. Answering was how Camille reloaded. "Because blue washes you out completely," Camille said, sweet as spoiled milk. "And I wanted the king to see the real you before you got any ideas about being seen at all tonight." 3 girls from a neighboring pack had gone quiet nearby, listening the way people listen when they're pretending very hard not to. "Nobody wants you, Elira." Camille said it like she was commenting on the weather. Simple, obvious, not even cruel on purpose, which somehow made it worse. "You know that. I know that. Half this room knew it before you walked down those stairs. So smile, drink your terrible champagne, and let the rest of us actually enjoy our evening." She turned and walked off, leaving her laugh behind her like litter someone forgot to pick up. Elira did not cry. She had trained that particular reflex out of herself years ago, the same way you train a hand not to flinch from a stove that keeps burning it. She fixed her eyes on the chandelier instead and started counting the crystal drops. She got to 11. That was when the room changed. She felt it before she understood it, a shift low in her chest, the kind of quiet that isn't silence exactly, more like 80 people holding one breath at the same time. King Roderick had stopped walking toward the dais. He was walking toward her, not glancing her way, not passing through on his way to somewhere more important. Walking, direct, unhurried. The crowd folded open around him the way water moves around a stone that has finally, after years of sitting still, decided to roll. Camille's laugh died somewhere in her throat. Elira watched the exact muscle in her sister's jaw stop working. The king reached her. Up close he smelled like cedar and something colder underneath it, like the air right before the first snow of the season. He didn't bow. Men like him rarely did, not even for manners' sake, but he tilted his head toward her with a weight that felt, absurdly, like an apology for every year that had come before this one moment. "Elira Vance," he said. Her name sat in his mouth like he'd practiced it. "Your Grace." Her voice came out steadier than she had any right to expect. "I came to ask you to dance." A small pause, deliberate. "I came to ask you first, before anyone else in this room got the idea." Behind him, 40 conversations had already stopped being about anything except this. Camille found her voice, thin and too loud for the sudden quiet. "Your Grace, I don't think you understand who." "I understand exactly who." He didn't turn to look at her. His eyes stayed on Elira, steady, the color of something that had survived a fire and come out the other side harder for it. "I've understood for longer than you'd like, actually." He held out his hand. Not a request, a door already being held open. "I don't dance well," Elira said, because it was true, and because someone in this family had to keep saying true things out loud once in a while. "Good," he said. "Neither do I. We'll be terrible together." She put her hand in his. The orchestra found the next measure like it had been waiting on permission the whole time. As he pulled her into the first turn, close enough that the whole cold ballroom suddenly felt beside the point, he bent his head toward her ear. "Nobody wants you." A beat, his hand firm against her spine. "They were wrong. I've wanted you since the moment I first heard your name spoken in a room I wasn't supposed to be listening in on." Across the floor, Camille stood alone in a crowd that had already stopped looking at her, holding 2 glasses of champagne that nobody would ever drink. The dance ended, and the king did not let go of her hand right away, which was its own kind of scandal, the kind that would be repeated in 3 different versions by breakfast. "Walk with me," he said. Not a command exactly, close to one. They went out through the garden doors, past the guards who straightened when they saw him and then pretended very hard not to be watching. The night air was cooler than the ballroom, and Elira realized she'd been holding her shoulders up near her ears for hours without noticing. "You're wondering why," he said. "I'm wondering a lot of things, Your Grace. Roderick. When it's just us, it's Roderick." He walked a few steps ahead, hands behind his back, the posture of a man used to leading and uncomfortable with anything else. "You don't remember me." "Should I?" "No. Why would you? You were 14. I was passing through your village with my father's men, and there was a fire in the grain store, and half the pack was too busy arguing about whose fault it was to actually do anything about the horses trapped inside." Elira's steps slowed. "You went in," he said. 14 years old, in your nightclothes, and you went in and got 3 horses out before anyone else so much as picked up a bucket. Nobody thanked you for it. I remember that specifically. Nobody said a single word to you. Your family walked right past you like you'd done nothing at all." She had genuinely forgotten that night, or she'd made herself forget it, the way you make yourself forget most things in a house that only remembers your failures. "I asked my father who you were," Roderick said. "He didn't know. Took me 2 years to find out your name." She didn't have a word for what that was. "That's 8 years ago. I'm not a patient man about most things." He finally turned to face her fully. In the moonlight, his expression had lost some of the careful stillness he'd worn inside. "I am apparently a very patient man about this one thing." Somewhere behind them, the ballroom doors opened, and Camille's voice cut through the garden like a struck bell. "Elira, Mother wants you inside." "Now." Roderick didn't move. "Your mother can wait." "She's not talking to you," Camille said, and something in her tone had gone brittle, gone thin at the edges. "She's talking to my sister." "Your sister," Roderick said, "is who I came here for tonight. So unless your mother is planning to come out here and say that to my face, I suggest we let her wait a little longer." Camille's mouth opened. Nothing came out of it. She turned and went back inside, and the door shut a little harder than it needed to. Elira let out a breath she hadn't noticed holding for the second time that night. "You don't have to defend me," she said. "I know I don't have to." He said it simply, like it wasn't even a decision he'd weighed. "I want to." There's a difference, and I think you've spent your whole life around people who never bothered to learn it. Her mother was waiting in the hallway when she finally went back inside, alone, Roderick having been pulled away by 3 council members with urgent faces and urgent papers. "What did you say to him?" her mother said. Not a question, an accusation wearing a question's clothes. "Nothing. He did the talking." "Don't be smart with me." Her mother's eyes moved over her the way Camille's had earlier, cataloging, calculating, looking for the angle. "Do you have any idea what this could mean for this family if you don't ruin it?" "If I don't ruin it?" "You know what I mean." "I don't, actually." Elira felt something small and hard settle into place behind her ribs, something that had been loose and rattling around in there for years finally finding its slot. "Tell me what you mean, Mother. Say the actual words." Her mother's mouth thinned. She didn't say the actual words. She never did. That was the family talent, really, saying the cruelest things without ever quite saying them, so that later, when you tried to repeat them back, they'd sound like nothing at all, and you'd be the one who looked crazy for being hurt by them. "Just don't embarrass us," her mother finally said, and walked off toward wherever Camille had gone to lick her wounds. Elira stood alone in the hallway for a moment, listening to the music start up again through the walls, and thought about the fact that in 22 years, that hallway conversation was the longest her mother had spoken directly to her in months. The letter came 4 days later. Formal paper, the blackthorn seal pressed into dark green wax, delivered by a writer who looked deeply uncomfortable to be standing in the Vance family's modest front hall. Her mother read it before Elira even got the chance to touch it. "He's requesting a formal courtship," her mother said, and her voice had changed completely from 4 days ago. Gone warm, gone proud, gone like she'd never once told Elira not to embarrass the family. "Elira, do you understand what this is? This is the king himself, requesting." "I can read it myself, Mother." Her mother handed it over like it had suddenly become precious cargo instead of a piece of paper addressed to a daughter she usually forgot was in the room. The letter was short, formal in the way court documents are formal, but there was one line near the bottom that didn't sound like a court document at all. "I would like the chance to know you properly, not the version of you your family describes, the version that walked into a burning building at 14 years old and never once thought to mention it." She read that line 4 times before she folded the letter back up. Camille did not take the news well. This surprised no one, least of all Elira, who had spent 22 years learning the exact weather patterns of her sister's moods. The first few days, Camille tried sweetness, sudden interest in Elira's dresses, her hair, whether she was nervous about the courtship, whether she needed help preparing. It was so unlike her that it set Elira's teeth on edge worse than the usual cruelty ever had. At least cruelty was honest. "You don't have to do this," Elira told her one night, catching her sister mid-compliment about a hairstyle neither of them cared about. "Do what?" "Pretend." Camille's face did something complicated for half a second, something that might have been hurt, if Elira let herself believe that was possible, and then smoothed back into its usual polish. "I don't know what you mean," Camille said, and left the room. The sweetness lasted 6 days. Then it stopped, all at once, the way weather changes when a front moves through, and the old Camille came back in full. "You know he'll get bored of you," she said one afternoon, watching Elira practice the particular walk that court ladies were apparently required to have. Spine straight, chin level, steps small and even. "Men like him don't stay interested in girls like you. It's a novelty. You're a novelty. Once it wears off. Once it wears off, what? He'll remember what everyone else already knows." "And what's that, exactly?" Camille smiled, thin and sharp. "That you're nothing special, Elira. You just happen to be standing in the right place at the right burning building." It landed. Elira wouldn't give her the satisfaction of showing that it landed, but it landed somewhere deep and old, in the part of her that had believed some version of that sentence her whole life, without anyone having to say it out loud until now. The courtship moved slowly, the way Roderick did most things. He visited twice a week, always with an escort, always proper, always careful not to make her family's already strange behavior any stranger. He asked her questions nobody had ever bothered asking, not about her dowry or her manners, but about what she actually liked, what she was afraid of, whether she'd ever wanted to leave this house and go somewhere nobody knew her name at all. Sometimes, she admitted, on the fourth visit, sitting in the garden where he'd first told her about the fire. Mostly I just wanted someone to notice I was still here. I noticed. 8 years later. I was young, and it took time to find you, and then it took more time to build something worth offering you, because I wasn't about to show up as some king demanding a girl marry him because he liked a story about horses. He said it plainly, without embarrassment. I wanted to be someone worth saying yes to, not just someone with a crown. You already had the crown. That usually covers it, for most people. Not for me. He looked at her directly, the way he always did, like looking away was a waste of a moment he wasn't willing to spend. I don't want most people. I want the girl who went into the fire and never once mentioned it to anyone, because she didn't think anyone would care. Elira had to look away from that. It was too much, too direct, too close to something she'd buried a long time ago. My family will ruin this, she said quietly. They ruin everything eventually. It's what they're good at. Your family, Roderick said, doesn't get a vote. The trouble started properly 2 months in, when Camille found a new project. His name was Dessen Voss, second son of a minor pack lord, ambitious in the particular way second sons often are, hungry for something that wasn't going to come to him through birth order, so he'd learned to go looking for it through other means. He'd attended court a handful of times. He knew things. He knew, specifically, which councils were unhappy about a king courting a girl with no political weight behind her name, no alliance value, nothing but a good story about a fire. Camille found him at a garden party 3 weeks after the ball, and within the hour, they'd found each other's exact use. She's not even that interesting, Camille told him, over drinks neither of them needed. There's nothing there. He's going to realize it eventually, and when he does, someone should already be positioned to catch his attention instead. And you think that's you? I know it's me. Dessen smiled the way men like him always smiled, like he already knew something you didn't. Then let's make sure he realizes it sooner rather than later. The whispers started small. A rumor here, a suggestion there, nothing that could be traced back to any single mouth, that Elira had been seen speaking too familiarly with a stable hand, that the fire story had been exaggerated, maybe even invented, to catch the king's attention in the first place, that her family was quietly desperately in debt, and this whole courtship was nothing but a well-timed act. None of it was true. All of it spread anyway, the way rumors do, less concerned with truth than with how satisfying they sound repeated at a dinner table. Roderick came to her 4 weeks later with a face she hadn't seen on him before. Not angry exactly, but tired, in a way that went deeper than a bad night's sleep. You've heard the talk, he said. Some of it. None of it's true. I know that. I'm asking if you know that. He looked at her for a long moment, long enough that she felt the old fear crawl back up her spine, the fear that had lived there her whole life, the one that said, eventually everyone leaves, eventually everyone decides you're not worth the trouble, eventually you're standing in a ballroom again with nobody crossing the room for you. I know it, he finally said. I just needed to hear you say it wasn't true. Not because I doubted you, because I wanted to watch your face when you said it. Why? Because liars flinch. You didn't. The rumors kept coming anyway, each one slightly worse than the last, each one traced eventually, though slowly, carefully, the way these things always are, back toward the same general direction. Dessen Voss's name started appearing in the same conversations as the rumors themselves, which was either very sloppy of him or, as Roderick's counsel eventually suspected, entirely intentional. Some men wanted to be seen stirring trouble. It made them feel important even when the trouble backfired. Camille's name did not appear anywhere. Camille had learned, over a lifetime of careful cruelty, exactly how to leave no fingerprints. But Elira knew. She'd know that particular flavor of cruelty anywhere. The specific shape of it, sweet on the outside and rotted through the middle. She confronted her sister on a Tuesday, in the kitchen, the one room in the house that had always felt more like hers than anyone else's. "You could have just told me you hated me," Elira said. "It would have been kinder than all this." Camille's face did the flinch thing again, the almost hurt thing, and this time it lasted a full 2 seconds before it smoothed away. "I don't hate you. You've spent my whole life telling me nobody wants me. Now you're spreading lies to a king to make sure it stays true. Forgive me if I don't see much difference between that and hate." "You don't understand what it's like," Camille said, and her voice cracked, just slightly, just enough that Elira almost softened toward her. "Being the pretty one. Being the one everyone expects things from. Do you know what it's like to spend your whole life being told you're only worth what you look like, and then watch the plain sister get chosen by a king for something real? That's not my fault. I know it's not your fault." Camille's eyes were wet now, and for the first time in either of their lives, Elira believed the tears were real. That doesn't make it hurt less. It was, Elira realized, the closest thing to an honest sentence her sister had ever said to her. It still wasn't an apology. It still didn't undo the rumors already loose in the world, moving through drawing rooms and dinner tables with a life of their own now, too far gone to call back. "I'm sorry you're hurting," Elira said, because it was true, and she was tired of being the only one in this family who said true things out loud. "I'm not sorry I was chosen. Those are two different things, and you're going to have to learn to hold both of them, because I'm done carrying your unhappiness on top of my own." She left the kitchen. It was, she thought, the first time in her whole life she'd walked away from her sister instead of the other way around. The rumors reached a head at the autumn gathering, the kind of event where every pack lord in the region showed up to eat too much and argue about trade routes and, this year apparently, to discuss whether their king had lost his good judgment over a girl with no name worth mentioning. Desson Voss made his move that night, cornering Roderick near the wine table with the practiced casualness of a man who'd rehearsed this conversation at least a dozen times in a mirror. "Your Grace, if I may, some of the council are concerned, not about the girl herself, of course, about the optics. A king's mate should bring something to the alliance. Land, connections, some kind of what?" Roderick said. His voice had gone very quiet, which anyone who knew him would have recognized as significantly more dangerous than loud. "Value," Desson said, apparently not knowing him well enough to recognize the warning. "Forgive me for being blunt, Your Grace, but a girl with no dowry, no alliance, nothing but a rumor about a fire that half the court now doubts even happened." "I was there," Roderick said. "I watched her do it. I don't need the court's permission to trust my own eyes." "Of course, Your Grace. I only meant—" "What you meant," Roderick said, stepping closer, close enough that Desson's easy smile finally started to slip, "was that you've spent the last 2 months manufacturing rumors about a woman who's done nothing but survive a family that treats her like furniture, because you thought it might create an opening for yourself. I want you to understand something clearly. There is no opening. There never was one. And if I find one more rumor traced back to your name, you will discover exactly how patient I am not when it comes to people who try to hurt what's mine." The wine table had gone very quiet. Several nearby conversations had stopped entirely, the way conversations do when they sense they're about to become tomorrow's gossip. Desson's face had drained of most of its color. "Your Grace, I never—" "Get out of my sight," Roderick said. "Before I decide, blunt honesty goes both directions tonight." Desson left. He did not come back to court again that season, or the next one, and eventually people simply stopped mentioning his name at all, the way names tend to disappear once they've been proven not to matter. Elira heard about all of this secondhand, the way you hear about most things done in your defense, through other people's retellings, embellished slightly with each new mouth it passed through. By the time it reached her, 3 separate versions were circulating, though all 3 agreed on the important part. The king had defended her, loudly, in front of half the region's pack lords, without a single moment of hesitation. She found him 2 days later, in the garden, the one place that had quietly become theirs. "You didn't have to do that," she said, though she was starting to notice this was becoming something of a refrain between them. "You keep saying that. You keep doing things I didn't ask for." "I know." He almost smiled, which for him was practically a full grin. "I think I'm going to keep doing it anyway." She sat beside him on the stone bench, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. "My sister was behind some of it. The rumors." "I know." "You know? My counsel isn't as slow as everyone assumes. We traced most of it back within the first 2 weeks. Dessen was sloppy. Your sister was not, which honestly made her more concerning, but harder to prove." He was quiet for a moment. "I didn't say anything because I wanted to see if you'd tell me yourself." "Would it have changed anything? If I hadn't?" "No, but I would have known something about you either way." She thought about that, about a lifetime spent in a house that never once gave her the benefit of the doubt, and a man who apparently gave it to her by default, as a starting position, the way most people give trust to someone who's earned it over years. "I don't know how to be someone people choose," she admitted, quiet, the kind of quiet that only comes out in gardens at dusk, when nobody else is listening. "I've spent so long being the one who gets left standing at the edge of the room." "You're not standing at the edge anymore." He took her hand, the same way he had that first night, like it was something he'd been waiting a long time to be allowed to do. "You're standing right here, and I'm not going anywhere." The wedding happened in early winter, small by royal standards, which still meant it was larger than anything the Vance family had ever hosted or attended. Elira's mother cried through most of it, the kind of tears that come from relief and pride tangled together so tightly you can't tell which one is doing the actual crying. Her father gave a toast that mostly involved him talking about himself. Little Wren, 12 now and finally old enough to understand some of what had happened over the past year, held Elira's hand through the whole ceremony like she was afraid letting go might undo it. Camille came. She stood near the back, not the front, which was its own kind of statement, and she did not cry, and she did not give a toast, but she did approach Elira afterward, during the quiet part of the evening, when the important guests had mostly gone and only family remained. "You look happy," Camille said. It wasn't quite an apology. It also wasn't cruel. "I am. I'm trying to be glad about that." "You don't have to be glad yet," Elira said, surprising herself with how easily the forgiveness came, or at least the beginning of it. Not full forgiveness, not yet, but the first loose thread of it. "You just have to stop trying to take it away from me." Camille nodded, slow, and for the first time in either of their lives, the silence between them didn't feel like a weapon either one of them was holding. "I'm sorry," Camille finally said, so quiet it almost didn't survive the distance between them. "For all of it. Not just the rumors. All of it. Every year of it." It wasn't a perfect apology. It didn't undo 2 decades of small cruelties stacked one on top of another, like bricks in a wall Elira had spent her whole childhood standing behind. But it was real, and it was the first one she'd ever gotten, and sometimes a first real thing is worth more than 100 perfect ones that never come. "Thank you," Elira said. "I mean that." Later that night, after the guests had gone and the great hall had gone quiet, Roderick found her standing on the balcony that looked out over the whole kingdom, the lights of it spread out below like something too big to fully take in. "Regrets?" he asked, coming up beside her. "None." She leaned into him, the way she'd learned to over the past year, the way that had started to feel less like something she was allowed to do, and more like something she simply did now, without asking permission first. "I keep thinking about that ballroom. My sister saying nobody wanted me. I believed her, you know. I'd believed some version of that my whole life." "I know. You crossed the whole room that night." "I'd have crossed 100 rooms," he said. "I'd have crossed on foot, from the other side of the kingdom, if that's what it took. You were worth every step of it, and you're going to keep being worth it for the rest of both our lives, whether you fully believe that yet or not." She looked out at the lights below them, at the life that had opened up in front of her the moment a man decided to walk toward her instead of past her, and thought that maybe, finally, she was starting to believe it. "Nobody wants you," her sister had said, once, in a ballroom that felt like a lifetime ago now. She'd been wrong. Someone had wanted her all along. He'd just needed 8 years, one burning grain store, and the courage to walk across a crowded room to prove it. The end.